Welcome to the Storied Life, everyone. My name is Lana Jackson, and I'm joined by my sister, Jolene.
Hi, everyone.
Today on our podcast, for season 2 of our podcast, our first episode guest is Undra Duncan, who we're so excited to have. Undra is a women's wear designer from New York, who is a modern multicultural women's designer. Undra designs clothes that evoke confidence and an unapologetic presence. Undra New York is the perfect mix of professional and statement dressing, with the overall goal of empowering women to show up to work feeling like their most authentic self. Welcome to the Storied Life, Undra. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, Lana and Jolene, and excited to get started.
Yeah. So let's jump right in with our questions. So I just wanted to first start by saying that, so it's March, today is International Women's Day, and we're so grateful to be able to have you join us on this special day. But this year has gotten off to a very eventful start. The year saw us begin with a terrorist attack on the Capitol. History was made just a few days later with Kamala Harris being sworn in on the steps of that same Capitol. And then, of course, today being International Women's Day on the heels of Meghan Markle addressing issues with racism and bullying from the palace. As a woman of color, as a designer, how is this moment in our culture landing on you?
It's such a great question, because I think a lot of times women of color, we don't allow ourselves the time, most of the time, to sit and even think about how it's landing on us, because we always have to kind of like go. And I feel like that is more or less my, how I'm feeling about it. Like, I feel like I haven't had a chance to sit and really digest all of it. Of course, the storming on the Capitol was, I think, shocking to everyone. That, this is America in 2020, 2021. But then you have like something just so beautiful, empowering a few days later, as you mentioned, with the inauguration with Kamala Harris. It's like so many highs and, deep lows and great highs in 2021 so far. And then, as I have to admit, I did not watch the interview in its entirety last night, but I did see some of the more important sound bites. But then, again, with the highs and the lows, you have this kind of fairy tale story with this first Black or biracial, whatever you want to call her, princess, and look what she's dealing with. It's just like, I think this is unfortunately, our story. Like, we go to these amazing highs and these amazing victories, but then we always have to come back and say, okay, we're still fighting, we're still pushing, we're still trying every day to keep our mental health and our sanity together because of all of the crazy lows that are still centuries after being in this country that we still have to deal with.
Yeah. And I think it's also just really appropriate because the theme for this International Women's Day is hashtag choose to challenge. And I think that definitely kind of sums up what you're saying, that it's, for us, there is always a continual struggle as women, but especially as women of color, to speak truth to power, to show up powerfully and to challenge the status quo. And that's happening across the board, whether that's Kamala Harris or Meghan Markle. It's, whether it's Black female designers within the fashion industry who are challenging, representation. And I think one of the things that drew us to you and to your brand was just the fact that you are who you are and the fact that you are present here. I remember growing up and studying fashion design and loving just the design process. And because I think I was like 13 or in my teens, and the Style Network was like a thing. I don't know if you remember that. I know.
I lived the Style Network, let me tell you.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that.
Like, network off. Oh my God, I used to love the Style Network.
Same. And I would always watch their little biopics on designers. And Tracy Reese was the only Black designer that I ever saw or knew of. And it's just a pleasure to see you and to see your work, and just how just you being who you are in this industry and doing this work is so important in terms of representation. And so we're excited to have you here. I wanted to talk about your journey to becoming a fashion designer. How did that seed get planted in you?
So, it's funny. Every time I get asked the question about how I became a fashion designer, I always say I never necessarily became one. I was sort of born a fashion designer. So I think the seed got planted. I believe the seed got planted with my mom and my aunt. So my
Mhm.
family is from Guyana, South America, West Indian heritage, and they when my grandmother came to this country, she had 8 children, and she sent for one. She sent for them one by one, and when I saw my aunts and my mom, like, my growing up, my mom was a bank teller. I had my aunts were like, I had an aunt who was the most fabulous. She's deceased now, but she was a maid, but then she started her own maid service business. But these women who were like, just regular 9 to 5 women, but on the weekends when they would go out, and in our culture it's like they partied a lot, and they would literally transform into Donna Summers and Diana Ross every Friday, Saturday. It was just something. As a little girl, I used to be in such awe. And for a point of my upbringing, I lived with my grandmother. So my grandmother's house was central. So my mom and my sisters and I lived with my grandmother, and so they would all come there and meet there to get dressed and to go out. And I just used to be in awe of them. I thought they were the most fabulous women. And I think my first, iteration into taking that and becoming a designer was I used to get fabric and probably clothes I shouldn't have been cutting up, and socks, and recreate those looks on my dolls.
Mhm.
So from a very young age, I knew that fashion and a creative career was in my future. But I was like you, I did not see women. And I don't think growing up, I even, until I was probably maybe in my 20s, I don't, because I'm probably a little older than you. I remember seeing Tracy Reeds. Like growing up, there really weren't any, especially women. Like we
Mhm.
had like maybe Stephen Burrows and a couple of others, but in the forefront, there weren't really any. And so it wasn't that. So when I was time for me to like pick a career, one thing I saw a lot of hairstylists. So I actually, out of high school, I became a hairstylist, and I was
Mhm.
actually pretty good. And I did it throughout high school, and then I took a year off from college. I didn't go to college right away. And so then when it was time for me to go away to school, I was like, okay, well, I'll study business, because I know, I've always wanted to work for myself, whether that be like a salon owner or a designer. And it's not that, because I know like with a lot of, um, West Indian and even like African families, they like, you got to go to college for this, and this. That wasn't my story. It's just that I don't think my mom really saw people, because she knew I was a creative, she knew I was a designer, and she always supported that. But when
Mhm.
it came to like picking a major and a job, I don't think she saw it enough to see it, and she didn't see it really successful. Of course, in our community, we have tailors and things like that, but as a designer, that just like none of us like really it really occurred to us. So I went to Howard University and I went to school for business. And um, coming out of there, I think I really struggled a lot, because it was like, I'm from New York. So it's like, do I come back to New York and try this fashion thing where I have literally no connections? I've done no internships. All I know how to do is like sew. Or
Mhm.
do I take these job offers because companies, they recruit very heavily out of Howard. Do I take these job offers that's paying me a nice little sum of money, giving me a company car, an apartment, a stipend? Like I've never had a stipend before. Like, so I took that road. And this is the long, I guess the long version of the story. So I moved to LA to work for an automotive company in their marketing department. During that time, my first, I would say 6 months there, I was very depressed. I was, I didn't have any family in LA. And
Mhm.
I just felt very empty. And I knew I wasn't doing my purpose. And I knew I wasn't even on the path to where I believe I wasn't on the path where I knew God wanted me to do with my life. So what I decided to do, Long Beach College had a fashion program, a very small fashion program. And I went and I signed up to be, I signed up to take a sketching class. And that sketching class was Tuesdays and Thursdays from like 6 to 8. And that experience kind of brought me back alive. Like my whole life, like forget about work, forget about dating, forget about everything. My whole life revolved around Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 8. Um,
Mhm.
and then by the time the semester was over, I knew that this is what I needed to be doing. And so it took me a little while, not much, like maybe 3 to 6 months after the semester was over, that I quit my job and moved back to New York to pursue fashion.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story. Just listening to you, we have, I think, so much in common with your background, and we too are also West Indian, Guyanese.
Our mom and her dad are Guyanese.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're from Berbice. And I just loved hearing about the inspiration behind watching your mother and grandmother get ready. We get a bit of our sense of style as well from our mom, and even the inspiration behind the story life and the love of storytelling. My mom is a huge movie person and took movie critique classes when she was a student at Pace University in New York. So we have that also New York connection as well. I was born there. And we just grew up just with her, critiquing storytelling. We couldn't watch, a gum commercial without our mom being like, what did you learn from that? And there was always a moral behind the story. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's really powerful to hear just decisions that you made, challenges that you came across, and also taking like risk and opportunities. The Long Beach course, as you're talking, I'm even thinking about the connection between you and my sister and her coursework at Fashion Institute Design and Merchandising, FINM, in LA. And just taking a chance of doing something different with what she wanted to pursue and study. And sometimes it's outside of what people expect us to be doing. Or even the expectations that society has for us, but really following through on what you feel you're being called to do. And I really got that from what you were saying. So thank you so much for sharing that. And even your studies at Howard University and us being a DC natives here. So I just feel like we have so much in common.
Yeah.
It was really great to hear how you got started, and just digging a little bit more into your company. Wanted to know if you can share a little bit more about the story of deciding to launch Undra Celeste New York, and what was the sort of the catalyst or that thing that you always knew that you needed to do in regards to the spark that started Undra Celeste.
So Undra Celeste was started. So it started very organically as an extension from me. So what happened was that I had a handbag company with one of my cousins. So my cousin and I, who's like my best friend, we came together and we started this handbag company called Cousin and Co. And it was very cute. We had some really significant success with it. But she got to a point in her life where she had like a lot of different things going on, and she just wanted to kind of move on. And I can understand that, because we were putting a lot of work into it, and it was just it wasn't getting to the next level. It was moving, I can say, but it wasn't like paying all the bills. So when she and I decided to go ahead and and dissolved the company, I still kind of had that thing. Like, it's just that thing in you. The same thing that I said was like implanted in me since a little girl. And I wanted to go forward with something. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start this fashion brand. And it's just going to be me. It's Undra Celeste. It's who I am. And one of the reasons why I called it that is because my name is Undra Celeste Duncan. However, my life is kind of split by my name. So if you know me from high school before and you are family, you call me Celeste. Like, literally, there's people who've known me my entire life who, until I started this business, didn't know my name was Undra. So it's like, that's that part. When I went away to Howard and I entered the professional world, everybody knows me as Undra. So if I meet people, like if I see somebody in my life and they call me Celeste, like I already know, even if I don't remember them, which happens, if you call me Celeste, I either know you from high school or your family friend, or I know you from that part of my life. It's funny, but it's very true. So I said, these are the two parts of me. And I wanted to, and it's not just my name, but it's like two parts of one person that comes together, and that is the brand. So when I started Undra Celeste, I was working in corporate fashion. So I've been working in corporate fashion before I started my brand for about 12 years. And I had a very difficult time, right? This is an environment that is, predominantly run by people who don't look like us, people who don't appreciate us. And I had a hard time. I'm not gonna lie. I had some very challenging experiences and bosses. So when I started to use clothes, which I find like, and you ladies can attest to this, it's just coming from Guyanese backgrounds, I find that that's what Guyanese women do. Like and I think women of West Indian or of West Indian culture, it's like when Rihanna, a couple of years ago, she won that award at the CFDA, and in her speech, she said, you may not be able to beat me, but you're not going to beat my outfit. And I was like, that is so what women do. Like, you try to beat me down, but you're not going to look better than me. You're not going to show up flyer than me. And that's what you're not going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she put it so succinctly. It was like crazy. So that's what I started to do. And I took like my background, I've always been into fashion, but at that point I was using it as an armor. And so I designed the clothes that I basically wanted to wear to work. And as I was doing it, and it was like empowering, it was like self-empowerment. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a collection and this is going to be what it is. There was no tagline, no mantra. I just basically designed what I wanted to wear. And that first season did really well. Like right out the gate, I like went into production, which I don't advise a lot of young designers or new designers to do. I did it though. And it sold out. I think right out the gate, I got into like 5 or 6 boutiques, and it was great. Like, I was like, this is it. What happened over the years from 2016 till I would say about maybe 2019 is that there were other things that just kept it's all a part of the journey. So I don't want to say derail me, but when you have a brand and you have an aesthetic and it comes from you, you have to always be confident in what you're doing. And I was not always confident. So I would chase trends, and I would, go after this and go after that. And so in 2018 is when I did the LeBron James and HFR collaboration. And that year, I got so much press. I'm talking about like, they said it was like 500 million press impressions that I heard through that experience. And it didn't touch my bottom line. I mean, it barely touched my bottom line. When I mean like a drop in the bucket, barely. And so to me, that was something was wrong. Like something was clearly wrong. And so by the end of that year, I kind of sat back and I was like, what's going on? Like, what am I doing wrong? because the whole world is staring at me, but nobody's buying anything or very little bit.
Mhm.
So the that year I redesigned the collection, kind of going back to the DNA of what the brand was. And then in February of 2019, I did a showcase with the CFDA, and it was myself and 3 other designers. And when we were there, they invited press and buyers to come and see us. So out of that, Barney's was one of the buyers who came to see me, and she's looked through the collection. One of the buyers, I can't remember her name, but she was really nice, and she said, "Wow, this is really cool modern workwear." And I was like, "Wait a minute, that sounds like something." So, and I took it from there, and I said, "Well, this is what it is. It's redefining modern workwear, and it is specifically. I mean, obviously anybody can wear it."
Mhm.
But it speaks to women of color, women of different cultures, because the same way I did, the same way I know my mom did, the same way I know so many women who use clothes not just as a covering. It's not just something to keep you warm. It's something to keep you protected mentally. It's something to kind of like the Bible says, like gird your loins, like you getting dressed to go to war almost every day, and you have to have on the right thing. It makes a difference. And once I did, after that point, I started to market it that way. And that 2019 year was my best year to date in sales. Like, I didn't have 500 million press impressions, but I had a message to the woman I was trying to serve, and just let her know that I'm here and we are here to serve you. And my business grew like maybe 4 or 5 times it did from the year before.
Mhm.
Wow.
So,
That's amazing. And I think it just goes to the fact of, when we niche down and when we have a perspective, that's specific, that people can onboard onto, it's so much easier to have that kind of commercial viability, because people can identify with the specific point of difference that you have. And that's a lesson that even we have been learning as well with the Storied life. I think what I love about what you said in terms of women and modern workwear, especially now, especially what's so of the moment about Undra Celeste New York is that you have zeroed in on modern women's workwear. We're in a point in our culture where our concept of work has deeply shifted.
Yeah.
And that has been an ongoing process, I feel, for about the last 3 to 5 years. But then going into the pandemic, that really drove it home in terms of, how people are working and how they're dressed when they're working. And so even just looking at the runways these past couple seasons, and workwear just becoming more and more relaxed and more having a real focus on personal style, you know what I mean? And how that fits into the dynamic of your specific work environment and what those dress codes are. We're really in a place where personal style is important, and people being able to go to work and show up as themselves. I mean, the Guyanese point and the West Indian point is just like, I love that you said that, because people, that's just so, we know that, but I don't think anybody else knows that you can beat me, but you're not going to look better than me. And no. But I think
you could try to talk down to me. You could try to minimize my work, but what you're not going to do is look better than me. You're not going to show up fly to me. It's just not going to happen.
It's just not going to happen. Right. Completely. 100. But I love that, because we've always had that sense of style. And I know that came from our mom and our culture, and just the sense of fashion is a means of not just expression, but protection. When I need something when I need something to hold on to as I'm going through my day, I pick certain things. Like in this season, I'm really into combat boots. They make me feel like I can just kick somebody's ass and put my fist through a drywall.
Yeah.
And I need that right now. My anger is a motivator. Right. And so I choose things in my wardrobe in this season that feel a little bit tougher. So you're totally right about that. And I love that you zeroed in on that. But parking in that space, I wanted to kind of touch back on something you said about CFDA and also working with Nike and LeBron James on the first ever women's basketball shoe. And you talked about how that experience didn't really kind of pan out the way you thought it would in terms of your bottom line. What was that experience like of working with Nike? They've always been, it seems, from the outside, very open and committed to working with women and elevating women, especially women of color, in terms of the people they partner with. What was it experience like working with Nike and LeBron James? And was there anything else that you learned from that experience?
There's so many lessons from that experience, but just to answer the first part, like, how was it? It was amazing. Like, when I think what Nike does better than even making shoes is hiring people.
Mm-hmm.
There are some amazing people who work there, and I think once my experience is that once they bought into the idea and the concept, and and obviously LeBron James, he's not going to do anything that he doesn't believe in, and he believed in it. It was like full speed ahead. And it was a beautiful experience. We got to meet and spend some time with some amazing people, including LeBron and his team. And I think I could go on and on about the lessons, but I would say one of the biggest lessons that for me was the power of collaboration and the power of sisterhood. Myself, Fee Noel, and Kimberly, we knew of each other prior to that. We didn't really, we probably were in a room before we had our first meeting for that one time before. And, we're all from Brooklyn, but you can, like, now they're my sisters, right? We all went through that experience, it was monumental. Like, how many people get to, create a historic shoe for the first time with the biggest sneaker company in the world, with the biggest athlete in the world? Like, it doesn't happen all the time. So we went through that experience very mindful, very grateful, very purposeful. And, outside of coming out of it, just like making history, we came out of it as really good friends. It's so funny because I just got a text from Kimberly. And prior to that experience, I looked at my journey as a fashion designer, which I believe a lot of designers do, in this kind of like cyclone of like, you got to be by yourself and you got to push. And if I let anybody in, they're going to steal something. And this person's my competition. Like, the only person that is my competition today is myself from yesterday. Like, that's what that experience has taught me. Like, and I think now I'm seeing it just through like social media. I'm seeing a lot more of it. And I think, and I'm so happy women, particularly women of color, are getting that. Like, we're so much stronger together. Even if we're not working on a project together, like, our support and our, and our rallying behind each other and for each other is so important. Mm-hmm. So that was like the biggest lesson I've got out of it. And then in terms of the bottom line for my brand, it was an eye opener. I don't think I used to say, I want a fashion business, not an event business. And what I mean by an event business is that you have to stop looking at your business in terms of these big events. Like, this big thing is going to happen and it's going to make me a millionaire, or this event, because that's not what it is. It's about connecting with the customer. It's about building a community. It's about, obviously delivering beautiful product and growing a community of people who want what you have. Mm-hmm. One event is not going to change, now it can happen for certain people, but you have to still have those other things to hold on to the momentum. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what it taught me, because I believe that to a certain degree, even though like my messaging wasn't right, like maybe the clothes weren't even right, I just thought that, oh, I did this shoe with LeBron James and these wonderful ladies, that it was going to like change my life, and it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important lesson for a lot of us who are entrepreneurially minded, that it's not so much about these kind of one-off opportunities. Not that those aren't important, they absolutely are, especially for publicity and just for, ranking on Google or something like that. They're important. And they do establish credibility, but it is about the long game in terms of the brand that you're building and the message that you're sending. And if that message is resonating with people.
And I really loved hearing the story behind like who the Undra Celeste woman is, and would love to know how that kind of correlates with the fabrics and silhouettes and things that you choose in your just overall creative design process.
Yeah.
Yes. So I tend to start every collection with color, but I let it happen organically. It is something that just comes naturally, I think, because I've worked in product development, and I've spent in my 12 years before I, launched and quit my job, because that didn't happen simultaneously. But I always start with a color palette. Like the colors, I always say the colors kind of come to me. And then I explore from there. I, do swatching and inspiration and Pantone. So the thing about this is that the process is going to be changing a little bit, because when you're a direct to customer brand, which I am right now, 100%, well, I have one retailer, but you kind of operate on your own clock, right? So I can sit around and like wait for a color palette to come to me, and then I'm like, oh, I'm going to develop this, and I'll do this, and I'll add this print. And that's like the organic way, and it's worked. And however, one of the things is that I am starting to work with retailers now, and as I go into that, it has to be more like on a schedule. So I'm curious to see how that works myself. But as of right now, I 100% start with color, and then I kind of dream up a print. My prints are very, they're usually simple. Like right now, I have the scribble heart. In the past, I've had like, beautiful bird print, and and I'll let those experiences with the color come to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Love hearing kind of your process behind everything and letting things come to you organically. And do you attach any special meaning to the colors or to fabrics, or it's mostly just what is inspiring you at the time?
It's mostly what's inspiring me at the time. It's mostly that. This latest collection I did, I added an African mud cloth print, and that is something I'm like very much into black and cream. I have been for probably about a year now. And that particular print only comes in black and white and black, and then like this rust color similar to the dress I'm wearing. And I just really love that. So I infused that into my season 9 collection in more soft feminine ways, because mud cloth is very heavy, very thick. And so I was like, oh, it would be beautiful if we took this and made it soft. It's actually, if you, I don't know, you can see that dress right there.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So that is, so it's season by season. The one thing that is consistent with my designing when I'm thinking of concept is the customer. I always think, how does she want to feel? And that's one thing I thought a lot about when designing this collection, because majority of it was designed during the quarantine. And like by the time this comes out, most of the country, I guess, will be vaccinated and will be coming out. So how does she want to feel? How does she want to look when she's coming back out into the world? And so that is more or less what I'm thinking with every collection.
And what are some of those themes that you think that women want to feel like right now, or at least post quarantine?
I think number one thing is that the number one lesson I think that women have learned through this is that number one, life is short. we're not really doing the shrinking thing anymore. We're not hiding who we are or where we're from. We're going to take up more space. We're not just, you know, moving along to get along. And, you know, and this whole thing about bold dressing, I feel like will be very much important to her during this time. So that's what I feel, and you know, that's what I hope. And I think history even speaks to that, because when we had the you know, the Spanish flu, that was right after the Roaring Twenties was right after that. Like people
Yeah.
took it overboard, and I hope they do it again. I really do.
Yes. It's funny how history repeats itself in that sense, and just like the cyclical nature of how people respond to the times with fashion, you know, and how what we wear and how the way that we want to feel ourselves shows up in what we decide to put on. So, but one thing I wanted to ask was just kind of backing up to your design process, and Julian was talking about just how you choose certain silhouettes and colors. Understanding your design process and sort of like finding that as a designer. I had read that you were mentored by Tory Burch and worked with that company. How did that experience shape you as a designer, and just having an opportunity to learn from another really powerful female designer like Tory?
So, okay, so I got mentorship through Tory Burch at a really interesting time. So I'm somebody who always believes that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. You know, there are no coincidences. So when my cousin and I were doing, Cousin and Co, you know, I had applied for a small business loan to this organization. And at the same time, Tory Burch, she didn't have her Tory Burch Foundation, but she was starting it, right? And so she went to the same organization because they worked with women. They worked with women businesses, and she said, "Well, hey, who can you match me up with?" And it was like, "Oh, well, we have these two young ladies who, you know, happen to have a fashion company." And Tori, you know, I don't keep in touch with her as much anymore, but Tori was one of those people who, I don't know if it was just her heart. I'm gonna say it was, or just her being naive. Like she still had this huge business, and she kind of just opened the door. Like her publicist team, her like product development team, and she was just like, give these girls what they need. And people don't do that. I mean, not really, unless you know them. And I think that experience was so amazing because it shows that we can definitely work together on a real surface level. I haven't seen that since, even as I, you know, right now I'm working with this organization called Raise Fashion, and the women at Raise, and of course HFR, are amazing. But it's like, these are organizations, and Tori was just like a person at the time, and she had a company. She had a huge company. Her company was still, you know, pretty big at that time, and she just kind of opened her door for my cousin and I. And you know, of course, our business didn't last, but I'm still here, and I think I'm still here because of, you know, because I saw what the possibilities could be after working with her.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear that. I think it's really important for people to hear corrective experiences where they actually are experiencing a form of allyship. And just like, you know, talking the talk, if we're about hashtag women supporting women, then we should be supporting one another. And really glad to hear the action behind that. A little bit sad to hear that that's kind of been maybe the only time that maybe that has happened, or it hasn't happened in that way again. But glad that you had that experience of another woman being for you and pulling you up, giving you the resources that you need as well to continue to succeed, and continuing to pass that along.
Yeah, I think that's important for, you know, for consumers to understand that there's some accountability, you
Yeah.
know, and that things are actually changing big organizations or design houses like Tory Burch. So that's encouraging to hear. I think looking to the future and sort of coming to the end of our interview together, I wanted to kind of touch on two things. The first thing was last fall at New York Fashion Week, you were featured in Black and Fashion Council's first ever Discovery Showroom, which I know they did again this year, which I loved, and loved learning about all the new designers that were featured. But what were some of the tangible benefits of working with Black and Fashion Council? The work that Lindsay Peoples-Wagner and Cedrine Charles has done has just been incredible in really moving the needle forward for Black designers, and being one of the first designers to be a part of that. What did that do for you in terms of just tangible or even intangible benefits?
The Black and Fashion Council, I think, is just like it's a necessary organization for where designers of color and just people of color need to go. One of the things I can say that being a part of that last season for me personally was, I got a lot of press connections out of that. Like that was the first time in my career where, In Style Magazine, Harper's Bazaar, Elle Magazine came to see me. Like, it's not like me chasing them. So they came to see me, and I was able to develop those relationships. And I think, the thing is I feel like with every opportunity, and I'll say this with my Tory Burch opportunity, all the opportunities I've had with Harlem's Fashion Road, Nike, Black and Fashion Council, it's an opportunity, but as a designer or an entrepreneur in any entrepreneurial space you might be in, it's up to you to make it what you need to make it. It's up to you to show up and to be great and to be ready. You can't walk into these opportunities getting ready. You got to be ready and make it what you can, right? Sometimes I even think back on my Tory Burch experience, and I'm like, wow, well, what if that would have happened now? Like, I would have went crazy. But it happened when it was supposed to happen, and I was as ready for it at that point as I could have been. But it's like you just have to make sure that these opportunities, when they come, that you're ready. You have the mindset, and you're prepared to go forward. But the experience with Black and Fashion Council, last season was amazing. I will continue to keep in contact with those ladies. Both of them are just doing amazing things professionally and with the council. So yeah, I'm proud to be a part of it.
Good. We're really glad to hear that you're a part of the council. We've been following it for quite some time and really inspired by the work that's being done to elevate Black designers. So really glad to hear your partnership with them and your continued work with them, and would love to continue to follow you through your work with Black and Fashion Council and just your work in general. And just wrapping up our interview, I always love to kind of end on, people do lots of interviews, and wanted to know what's something that no one has asked you yet, or something that you really want to share with someone who is coming to be more familiar with Undra Celeste.
Something that no one has asked me. That's a good question. I don't know. I think one of the things that we, not necessarily that no one has asked me, but it's what I would want people to know is the, maybe like the mental health journey of designers and creatives. I think that part of it doesn't get, because you see a lot of the glitz and the glamour and the, hey, look at me, and the, and the curated Instagram feeds. And behind it, a lot of times there are creatives that are very lonely, very, emotionally not fit. And I, as a designer, I have experienced that. I know a lot of other designers who also experience that. And I think that's like just really important to make sure that not only, because I think right now there's a huge focus on making brands successful. And I am 100% for that. Like, let's get these brands in stores. Let's get these brands in major publications. I'm 100% with it. But also it's like, okay, well, let's talk about that part, because I think traditionally, when you don't have finances and resources and you're just trying to run a business because you're trying to like make rent or make payroll, that part of it is just not talked about as much. So I guess that would be it. That that meme, it says, check on your single friends, check on your designer friends.
Yes.
Check on your creative friends.
Yeah.
They're not well.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you said that. I have a background in psychology. My former career was working in clinical psychiatry with adolescents who had severe psychiatric disorders. So really glad to just hear sort of shining a light on mental health, even with Meghan Markle's interview last night and sharing her mental health struggles. And we've known about Harry's for quite some time after his mother's death. I think it's really important for people to know that, behind a smile, people can be struggling, and that mental health is really important to prioritize, to check on your strong friends or your designer friends, as you've said, and to understand where people might be coming from and sort of the difficulties that they're facing, and pursuing your dream and doing the work that you want to do. That comes with a level of at times intense pressure or anxiety or depression about things not going the way that you'd like them to. Running a business, it can be difficult, and understanding, having compassion for the mental health space that you have to be in to continue to pursue your dreams and do what you love. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a really important message for people to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think just even more important for Black creatives, because the stakes are so much higher for us. And so
Absolutely.
the mental health component is such an important point that you made. Thank you so much, Undra, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure just to see a face and to be able to connect with other creatives in this season. I hope that in the future we can come by New York if there's a showroom and drop by and say hi.
Do you ladies visit New York often enough?
Yeah. It's just a train ride in from DC. So
no, I mean, I used to, because DC is like literally my second favorite city. So my best friend, two of my best friends live there, and so I do come in. Maybe I'll let you guys know next time I'm in, or you let me know.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Thank you again for joining us. We are so excited to have this feature go live, and also I am wearing Undra's rib cage sleeveless top in this beautiful pink color, and it comes with a skirt as well, and all of that will be linked in the feature. And excited to share more from your collection, especially as the weather warms up. It's nice to be able to wear something a little bit lighter, so excited for that. Thank you again, Undra. It was a pleasure to have you on the Storyline.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, and it was a pleasure being here, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.